Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just a minute to get everyone here, and then we'll start at 1 minute past 12. When you're waiting a minute, seems like a long time. Okay, 1 minute past 12. So hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of our webinar series called Webinar Wednesdays. I'm Sugeshni, the head of marketing at Mint Group, and we're so glad that you could join us today. So whether you're a regular or this is your first time joining us, welcome. I hope you've got your cup of tea or coffee in hand on this gloomy, rainy Wednesday, because I think we've got a great session lined up for you. Just a quick heads up, we have the session recorded, so don't worry, you'll be able to revisit it or share it with your colleagues after today. And as always, we enable the Q&A feature, so feel free to drop in your questions at any point during the session. We'll make sure to tackle them either in the platform or towards the end of the session. So today we're talking about something that's at the heart of any successful digital transformation, and that is adoption and change management. It's one thing to invest in cutting edge technology, but if your teams aren't equipped or engaged and empowered to use it, the value of that investment is never fully realized. So in this session, we're going to explore why adoption isn't just about training, it's about mindset, proven strategies to drive lasting change across teams, how to identify and overcome common resistance points. And the team will share a few examples of what good change management looks like in action. So whether you're rolling out a new system, shifting to the cloud, or navigating cultural transformation, today's session will give you practical insights to lead your people through change with confidence. And with that said, I'm going to hand over to Marina de Villiers.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Marina de Villiers, and I'm joined by my fellow mentee and digital enablement consultant, Leandri. We are thrilled to have you here with us, and we can't wait to share how Mint prepares and supports people for technology through our digital enablement initiatives. Looking at our agenda, we'll start by defining what is digital enablement, why it is crucial in today's technical landscape, and we'll also explore the framework, which provides a structured approach to implementing these concepts. We will discuss the value of digital enablement and what it brings to organizations, highlighting the impact on efficiency and tech adoption. I will also then hand over to Leandri to take us through our approach, and finally, she will touch on how to measure adoption effectively. Each of these areas are interconnected and vital for driving successful digital enablement, ultimately preparing and supporting people for technology. But before we jump into it, we just want to take a quick poll and gauge what your view is of the primary goal of digital enablement. Is it to implement new technology, to reshape people's perspective on technology and empower business transformation, or to provide users with communication and training on new technology? So the poll will pop up on your screen. Just give your answer, and then you can close it back down. So oftentimes when people talk about digital enablement, we think of just it being adoption or change management or just training. And yes, that plays a big role, but it's also Mint's own unique term for everything to do with people's interaction and experience with new technology. Digital enablement is a crucial aspect of successful adoption. we focus on equipping individuals and teams to embrace new technology. It's about reshaping people's perspective that encourages innovation and adaptability. By prioritizing adoption and change management, we not only ensure that users are trained, but also engaged and excited to use technology. Key components include comprehensive training support, user acceptance testing, and enhancing user experience and user interface. These elements work together to create a supportive environment where technology is seen as an enabler rather than a barrier, ultimately driving successful digital adoption. So let's talk about the key outcomes of digital enablement. First up, we've got Excite. This is all about getting everyone pumped and eager for the changes ahead. If we can't build that buzz, we can't get everyone on board. Next, there's Empower. Here's where we focus on giving everyone the content and knowledge they need to really see the value in these changes. It's about making sure users are all confident and capable. Then we move to Entrench. This step is crucial because it involves creating new habits that fit with the way of working. It's about making these changes stick. And then finally, we have Evaluate. This is where we look back and measure how well these changes are working. And it's important to see if we're hitting the targets and if the new processes are effective. So now that we've established what is digital enablement, let's take a look at how we do it. Mint has framed digital enablement to encompass 4 key pillars, and today we'll focus mainly on adoption and change management. So the 4 key components of digital enablement is first, adoption and change management, which focuses on guiding users through transitions, minimizing the resistance, and fostering a positive attitude towards new technology and new tools. User acceptance testing ensures the system meets users' needs and expectations before full deployment. Training and skills development are essential for equipping users with the necessary knowledge and skills to use this new technology effectively. And then lastly, one that's often overlooked and not focused on enough is user experience and user interface design, which plays a significant role in ensuring that technology is intuitive and user-friendly, ultimately enhancing user satisfaction and productivity. These 4 components work together to reshape people's perspective on technology and to empower them for business transformation. Now, we follow the tried and tested ProSci methodology to change management and use the ADKAR framework as our building blocks to guide and support users through these change transitions. ADKAR is an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And think of each of these as stepping stones. You can't skip one and expect to succeed. So let's break it down. First, we start with helping everyone understand the project's goals. That's awareness. If people don't know what's happening, they won't be ready for the next step. Then comes desire. Here's where we get to talk about that what's in it for me factor. It's all about showing the benefits. Once they are excited and curious, we can move on to giving them the knowledge they need and helping them build that ability to use this new technology. It's also at this stage where we focus on providing users with the ability to transfer the new knowledge and skills to new users. If they don't have the first 2 steps, they won't be comfortable in learning and transferring these new skills. Finally, once they've got the hang of it, we focus on reinforcement. And this is all about creating new habits and making sure that the new way of working becomes second nature. Now, oftentimes, adoption efforts start too late in technology implementation, and that leads to higher resistance and lower adoption rates. Planning adoption strategies from the launch of a project and involving the effective users throughout can enhance acceptance and reduce pushback. It's all about bringing them along on the journey of digital transformation. Additionally, it's also essential to provide post-go-live training, support, and communication alongside deployment planning to make that change stick. Now let's take a quick poll again. What do you think is the biggest challenge in your organization in achieving digital enablement? Is it one, a lack of knowledge and expertise, resistance to change, budget constraints, or integration with existing systems? So let's explore what value digital enablement can add to organizations and individuals. The impact of not focusing on digital enablement is huge. First, we get user resistance. If we don't properly involve the impacted users, they can feel overwhelmed, which leads to frustration and a decreased engagement. Next, there's a productivity decline. When people are confused about new technology, it can slow everything down during the transition period. Then we have a greater cost of implementation. If we don't get it right the first time, we might face delays and have to revisit training and adoption efforts. ROI failure is another big one. If the solution doesn't bring the value we expect, we're looking at a negative return on investment. Change perception can also take a hit, and if we don't manage these changes well, it can negatively affect how users view the future changes. Finally, we have to address the what, why, and how factor. If we don't explain the purpose behind the changes, users will struggle with understanding what's in it for me, and that reduces their willingness to support the future changes. Now, I've mentioned earlier that we follow the ProSci methodology, and they conduct research which shows a direct correlation between applying excellent change management to projects, and it shows some impressive results. 65% of projects are more likely to stay on schedule. 71% of projects are more likely to stay on budget, and 88% are more likely to meet their objectives. These outcomes significantly contribute to achieving the targeted ROI for change initiatives. The data also shows that companies with excellent change management are 7 times more likely to reach their desired outcomes. So what are the critical success factors you need to focus on with digital transformation? First of all, you need to know your stakeholders, understand who the people are that will be mostly affected by this new technology. Next is to identify the key scenarios of how these people will be affected. Because if you understand the scenarios, you can effectively then communicate the impact in relatable terms. With a solid grasp on these factors, you can then craft effective awareness campaigns and training plans. Leadership support is crucial. Having leaders who are passionate and visibly backing transformation will inspire confidence and commitment across the board. Develop a clear strategic roadmap to guide everyone through the transition, and that is very essential. This includes appointing dedicated change management to oversee this process. Ensuring transparency and maintaining open and honest communication will build trust and inclusivity. Engage everyone at every level to foster participation and focus on middle management, because this is where resistance is often the highest. Convince middle management of its benefits, and they will advocate for the change. Now I can hand over to Leandria and she'll take you through the approach.
Good day, everyone. So now that Marina has provided us with an overview to understand a little bit more about what digital enablement entails, let's look at how we as Mint essentially help our clients to drive this digital enablement. So there are a few aspects within digital enablement that we can utilize, but it comes down to essentially four aspects. So first off, we have stakeholder analysis, and this is essentially where we understand the stakeholder grouping and leadership influence. With that, we can also establish decision makers, key requirements to consider, as well as the impact, no matter how small it might be. Then we have our digital enablement strategy. And this is essentially where we develop a detailed communication and engagement plan for a stakeholder group, including branding and creating an awareness theme. This particularly carries a set of messages and key components. So at times it might be simple, but at times it can become quite complex. But this is also where we consider available platforms, mediums, and formats of your intervention. And then we get to execute this campaign. And here we essentially distribute material to be used for the project and communication. It includes a variety of, for example, gamifications, roadshows, or any other forms of engagement. So an example would be like a co-pilot rollout. A particularly growing interest that we've seen lately is to have dedicated artificial intelligence days where information can be shared or users can collaborate. And finally, we get to the reinforcement post go live. And here we provide our users with support and assistance, and it is focused on a sustainable adoption. And this is the part that is most often forgotten. So once the solution of a client has been implemented and the project concludes, it is important to keep the momentum and engagement with users. So consider how within your organization will you continue driving the adoption or the adherence beyond the project. It is essentially supporting users through interventions ongoing until it becomes a part of their DNA. So if we want to engage our end users in some of these interventions, how do we go about it? So we like the concept of not doing change to them, but rather with them. And various possibilities exist that you can explore as a formal initiative or even informal. So with some creativity, we can play on end users' interest and create something that they can associate a solution with. And there's a couple of ways that we can do that. So first up, we have consistent branding and themes. And here we create a branding or a representation where when we refer to this new technology or process, users can be subconsciously conditioned to make an association. What do we mean by that? So think of Microsoft. You only need to see the Windows icon to make an association with Microsoft. And the same idea pertains to introducing something new. Sensitize users by creating that consistent association for them. Next up, we also have user forum. And this is where we essentially utilize communications and engagement forums within the organization to continuously share updates and insights with users. We can think of creating channels with a purpose in Teams. You can also utilize the Viva platform capability, but essentially it's to share knowledge, tips, information, etc. on a regular basis to keep that momentum. One note is to just be careful of not overwhelming users, but find that steady pace at which you can share, remind, and drive your adoption. A very interesting and lately very increasingly more popular is the idea of gamification. So as social beings, we often associate learning with an event or an incident. So why not tap into gamification? So the first thing that comes to mind is some fancy design, simulation, or video game. But this is not the case. We can create a game with purpose during some of our engagement, either virtually or even in person, where you engage users in that playfulness that links with the desired changes, either directly or indirectly. And then finally, we get to events. So today, many of us work virtually, and while we have all grown in our virtual engagement skill, nothing beats quite being together in unity in a room. So where it's possible, create those small events, and it doesn't need to be some big day, but where user groups can confer and engage on topic, learnings, or even awareness. The purpose here is to really unify your user around central topic and create that awareness beyond the immediate group. So a noteworthy mention here is to utilize any of these options or either in standalone or in conjunction with one another, as long as the focus remains on how to best reach your users and creating that ongoing impact. There's also that whole training aspect when we talk about digital enablement. And when we approach the training, it is important to keep a few things in mind. The burden of workload that your users already have in their day-to-day lives and their environment, but also the limitation they have on time, which impacts the reality of reduced attention spans. And lastly, the different learning styles that everyone has, and also the changes in recent ways of consuming content. So when we look at training, we can distinctively set apart sessions or combine them into one. But there are key focus areas that we tend to look at when we plan for training. So we start off with the context training, and here we ensure users understand the overall purpose of the new initiative and also the potential benefits that is expected. So we help our users understand how it could possibly affect them and then create that overall awareness of the foreseen changes. This typically happens as soon as possible after some communication or marketing around this initiative has taken place. Then we move over onto our foundational training, where we get to know a little bit more about this initiative. Here we provide insight into specific aspects, areas or modules that is associated within the solution and pertains to different user groups. So we look at the overall functionality and the capability of the processes as well as the systems. And this is also the point where if we do it too early, this is where we start losing our users, either through resistance or due to a too long of a period with no involvement. Users get excited and then they have to wait before they can get their hands on the tool or execute processes. Then we have our process training, and this is the point where we take a deep dive with users. So following the processes that were determined by the organization, we now guide users as to how they could execute the process effectively or complete their daily activities using these systems. The focus here is to drive the adoption and the understanding on a deeper level and provide users with the guidelines, best practices, and even basic issue resolution. Lastly, and often the most overlooked and critical aspect is our user-initiated training. So once a process or a system is implemented and in the hands of our users, and the technical experts start moving on to the next project, users are now left to their own demise. The layman term here is to create a hand-holding experience in which we can support users. And this requires those continuous reinforcement and support until the process or the system becomes a part of their DNA. So even if the training is not done in 4 separate sessions, these 4 components become critical in ensuring that users have everything that they need to continue striving in an ever-changing environment. And now let's have another quick poll. So Considering what we have shared so far and evaluating your own organization, share with us how you prepared, or do you feel your organization is prepared to implement digital enablement strategy? The poll will reflect on the screen and you are welcome to select your answer there. And it ranges from not being prepared at all within the organization to your organization being fully prepared for that. Right. So let's look at ways of measuring adoption. And specifically, what do we look for when we say measuring adoption? It's not as scientific as people indicate it to be. There we go. So adoption typically goes beyond just usage. So usage is a leading indicator that users will adopt the product. However, if the behavior cannot be sustained, you will not have a successful adoption. To ensure that we know which behaviors need that reinforcement, we measure essentially 3 different indications, which together provide us with an overall view. So here we start off by tracking the usage data. And here we help organizations understand how employees are interacting with these technologies. This data can reveal patterns, identify the high and low usage areas, and highlight adoption trends, or even where training may be required. Typically, the usage data from the admin portal will be used to track the consumption of each product after these campaigns. So these reports can show the frequency of logins, for example, and any other relevant metric that we set up for it to track. We can also collect user feedback, which essentially provides the qualitative insights into how employees feel about this new technology or process. So user awareness and satisfaction data from surveys can now be used to track the success of each intervention. And it also helps to gauge user satisfaction, identify some of the pain points, but also gather suggestions so that we can utilize those for continuous improvement. There's a couple of in-app feedback tools as well as third-party survey tool that can be used for this aspect. Then we can also look at a few key performance indicators, or KPIs as you will, which provide measurable value. And this indicates how effectively an organization is achieving the adoption goal. So these KPIs should be tailored to the specific objectives of the technology or process, but it is essential to work with the stakeholders to define these relevant KPIs. A few examples would be to look at a number of active users, the completion rates for training programs, or even the reduction in support tickets. So various dashboards and reporting tools can be set up that can then monitor these KPIs for you on a regular basis. By combining all of this qualitative and quantitative data, it provides a comprehensive view of technology adoption. Here we start integrating the user data, user feedback, and KPI monitoring into one unified dashboard. And there's tools such as Microsoft Power BI that you can use to visualize and analyze this data. And this provides us with some actionable insight. So overall adoption insight will then also help your organization to better understand the full impact of your technology initiative. It enables you to make those informed decisions, improve user experiences, as well as drive the successful adoption. And finally, there's just this one more area that we can measure, and that's our training area. So what we can do is we can start off by conducting a pre-training survey, and this really gathers users' understanding of the initiative. What do they know so far? And this becomes our benchmark prior to being introduced to detail. So with the insights into what people know already versus what they should be knowing, we can now start tailoring the training based on the user's need. We will then move on to execute our training program as we have planned it and in the phase approach, and then we can come to the point of conducting a post-training knowledge check. And here's where we see the variance between what users have indicated pre-training and where they feel they are post-training. It also highlights the user's comfort level post-training, but it can also be indicative of a few further interventions that might be required. Another measure would be to monitor training attendance from users, and at times sessions may be set up, but the attendance may be poor. And this can show us whether users are actively seeking the content of training, but also how efforts up until this point has been successful in creating that desire to attend. Having said that, session attendance is only a predictor to success. So if the attendance is low, it also may very well be that there is a bigger systemic issue that needs to be addressed within the organization. And finally, we can also monitor how often users return to the content for refresher. So if physical content or manuals have been provided, there are ways where we can see how often users access this material based on location, storage, and format. So post-training check and checking content again can give an indication of what should be trained, retrained, or addressed again in the future. Before we go, we would like your input in one final poll. And here, before I hand over back to my fellow mentee, our final poll is a call to action where we would like to find out from you if you are interested in our digital enablement offering and whether you would like for us to contact you. So while you all complete that, like I just mentioned, our fellow mentee have some exciting news to share with you, and I'll hand over to her in a minute. But for today, we have provided some insights into our men's way of how we approach digital enablement as a whole, what it entails, and also the value of having digital enablement when introducing changes within the organization. So from myself and Marina, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you were empowered and excited on the topic of digital enablement. And now I hand over to Sugeshni.
Thanks so much, Leandri. And thanks again to everyone for joining us today. We hope you are walking away with some fresh ideas and actionable strategies for driving adoption and managing change in your organization. As always, if there are any questions and we didn't get through during the session, we'll follow up with you directly. Don't forget, next month's webinar is just around the corner. We'll be talking about data strategy for the age of AI. As we know, these days, data is the new bacon or currency, so you won't want to miss this one. We put the link in the chat to join, to register for that webinar next month. Until then, take care and keep leading the charge for meaningful change. Thanks all.